will select
Well,
OK.
hello, Larry. Good to see you again. Has been a while.
Yes, it has, and it's great to see you. It is good to having a moment to actually just kind of stop and just then share and kind of see where we go with this.
Yeah, it is. And in the last few weeks or couple of months, a lot of things were going on in my life, and
Hmm.
one of the topics were was around vibrations, frequencies. Yeah, I
Hmm.
listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm just interested in what's going on in the universe. And so I thought we can talk today a little bit about frequencies and vibrations.
Hmm.
And what really triggered it is a statement that Nikola Tesla did back in, he lived from 1856 to 1943. And he made this statement. He said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I think we see that more and more now, with even in a scientific environment, that there's more and more new inventions coming out and therapies and things how
Yep.
people can use sound and frequency for healing purposes. So, and I know your sister Pamela, she's very much involved in that too. She's working with a lot of sound and light as well.
Yep.
So this has been kind of a point of interest in my life over the last couple of months. So I thought we can talk about this in the next few minutes, if that's okay with you.
That would be awesome.
Good. And one thing that I remember from the many discussions that we have is that you describe frequencies maybe a little bit different, the more like a spiritual channel rather than just a
Hmm.
physical vibration.
Right.
How would you define a spiritual frequency, and how would it be maybe different from a physical vibration or frequency that we scientifically experience?
Well, there is a reality that, like what you said, going back to Tesla's comment of searching frequency, vibration, and sound, and understanding these ways to measure it. And like if you want to look at something that is even happening, like you mentioned on the science level right now, they have found that they can record the sound frequencies and vibrational waves on a healthy coral reef. Then they can play that sound over a dead coral reef due to poison, whatever chemicals may have killed it, or boats ran it down, or whatever, or people over harvested the coral or something like that. And within days, it starts to become a living and vibrant force of coral reef just by putting these speakers underwater and playing the frequency of the other one that's fully alive. So it plays the sound frequencies, and then they extend the vibrational tones, and they have the benefit of the light frequencies of the sun already hitting the ground. So it wasn't surviving until they brought the frequencies of sound to it. So when we shift this reality, like we can measure these things and we can see these different things upon the earth, what I like to do is kind of move up and into the divine expression of what the frequencies precede as. What is a frequency that is coming of the divine? And also, which has been an interesting dialogue with a number of people, because they have this tendency or this view that God creator is the highest frequency. That is not true. God creator precedes frequency. You cannot limit the unlimited to a singular frequency. The unlimited is that which precedes frequency, yet now contains all higher states of frequency. So if we look to the spiritual nature of frequency, if we were trying to attain the authentic reality of creator within us, we would have to align ourselves with frequencies that are likened to the attributes of creator as creator in its original form without definition of frequency, then express blessed frequencies into creation. Expressing those blessed frequencies into creation, that's the memory of what we hold within us. If we can turn to the attributes of the divine that are integrity, authenticity, truth, love, purity, grace, compassion, peace. Those are the frequency levels that we would embrace from within us. And then if we become balanced in the fullness of expression that is creator through us, we would function as we've understood, like Yeshua functioned at that 1,000 level frequency. Other spiritual teachers have functioned in this range from 300 to 700 in their walk upon the earth. Most humans function in that level of about a 150 or just above because it's so shame and guilt driven. So now we get into the frequency. What does it mean by the lesser frequency? So the higher states of being combined, if I was to be nothing but creator's presence within me, this vibrational form would function as Yeshua did in that 1,000 range frequency, that 1,000 vibration, the highest state of vibrational frequency. However, if I am diminished in some way by self-deception or deceit upon others, or if I was in a state of shame or guilt, I would be dialing myself down, so to speak, from the higher state of being to a lesser frequency because I was allowing for lesser frequency things to govern my nature, more shame-filled, guilt-ridden, or deceptive.
But was Yahshua, Jesus, was he dialed down from that
No, what I
pre-frequency?
feel is in my understanding, what I know is Yeshua is the highest state of manifest frequency. He is the highest state. However, what he did was there were times where he was in settings where the person's present could only receive, say, 200. So he would function at 1,000, yet present them the 200. He would present them in a way that they could understand, they could receive, they could grasp, they could understand. Because there were, if you think about it, in that time, there were so many limiting aspects upon mankind and societal limitations, and like the diminishing of women and all these different things. Yet Yeshua knew women to be named as like as a kenegdu, the highest state of being, the one that is equal, the one that is strong when the other is weak. So when Yeshua knew these things, and he knew that that group right there, they could not hear. This group of men could not hear that God revered and held women so highly within that divine expression. They couldn't understand it. So Yeshua met them where they were until they had a place of trust and understanding, and then he would draw them into higher states of awareness. But there were also times where he said, as they were ascending, he was realizing, there are truths you cannot bear. And then he didn't say them. He didn't share with them yet because their minds could not comprehend a higher state because they were in such a lower vibrational frequency. Anything he spoke was too, almost like looking into a room that's too bright. They couldn't handle what he was saying, or he became like a threat to them because what he presented was more than they could process or comprehend, and they just shut down. It's kind of like in society now, a lot of the speaking engagements that people do, they're taught to present their understandings at like a third grade level because the audience in general can receive more, but you may lose one person that could not receive above that third grade level, or you may lose a group of people that are of like mind that could not take it. So if you give the knowledge available in the lower understanding, it will draw them into greater wisdom and greater clarity. So again, if you come back to your question about what is the spiritual aspect of frequency as opposed to like the earthly measuring the coral reef or measuring the Solfeggio's frequencies or whatever is going on, there is a spiritual reality that's unfolding beyond our physical sight. And I believe that that's where all manifestation of life begins, is just beyond our sight, before the manifestation of our DNA, before the desire to breathe, and that is the living presence of God without separation. Then we, in our life journey and our life walk, embrace these lesser things and find ourselves separated from the one that is the source, that is God within us, because we're willing to embrace a lesser attribute, which holds at a lesser frequency.
It makes me think of, I'm listening right now to a philosopher. His name is Ken Wilber. I don't know if you ever heard
Okay.
of him, but
No, I
he's
haven't.
talking. I can't even describe exactly what he does, but he's talking about spiritual um, intelligence versus being awakened. And he's talking about a process of growing in an intelligent manner versus being awakened. And what made me think when I listened to him is when you, as a young child, like I was going to Catholic church, I am exposed to frequencies and vibrations that I experience, be it the music or
Hmm.
the smell of the incense that's being dispersed, that's in there in the church, that I don't understand. I have no
Yep.
intelligence about it, but yet I may feel at awe, but I don't know what is this all about. So,
Hmm.
so I wonder sometimes there's a gap, between being led into an experience and a vibrational experience, but not understanding it,
Hmm.
versus gaining that awakened state of oneness, with God. I
But
find it
remember, if you understand the oneness of God within you, you might recognize that that moment within a celebration of worship or whatever that allowed you to touch awe opened you in such a way that so that as you began to fully awaken, you're able to reference back to that. It might have been, not have been the change of that moment, but that frequency was instilled in you.
Mhm.
That awareness of that thing beyond self, beyond the limited constructs of the mind or what you think you knew through schooling, was now fully manifesting in your adult mind, moving from the mind of a child just in awe and wonder to one who's awake, understanding, I know what that was now.
But so it's a conditioning, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm
Yep.
thinking of Tibetan monks. They're doing
Yep.
mantras, they sing,
Yep.
and a young child doesn't know what's going on. It just learns, to do
Exactly.
this. So it's a conditioning. So it's not a bad conditioning, right? But it's a
Yes.
growing up to a certain level of understanding, maybe.
Yes. And then I would say take great care because, like, one of the thoughts that I had about this whole process is, like when you start looking at the tools to help us return to the truth of our perfect union with divine, with God, with the holy reality of creator present within us, are we aware, consciously or mindfully aware of what we're consuming? In most cases, people aren't. So they are exposed to certain scents. They're exposed to lesser frequency chemicals in the food they don't know that is there. They're exposed to things like 5G and different frequencies that they're not aware of, and they're not attuned to recognize I need to do something to position myself not to be harmed in this way. So that even as the world puts out a certain technology, divine wisdom guided you in such a way that you found technology that could offset that, whether it be like a EMF reverse generator, the one that converts the EMF into positive energy for the body that actually increases health within the blood cells, or like oils, the different types of oils and what type of frequencies each one of them has. How could they elevate this antenna to function at a higher state of being? So if my environment is imposing, out of my ignorance, is imposing change into my body that I'm not quite aware of, but then I start to find maladies, discomfort, pain, and suffering in my body. As I seek God, God might guide me to certain instruments, tools present on the earth, meditative practice, chants of the monks, oils to take and apply to certain regions of our bodies, blessed and holy unctions, meaning a conveyor of God's Spirit to this region of my body by applying certain oils or certain types of dietary supplements that we use. However, one of the challenges that I see with that is people become overly dependent upon it, and then they start doing. I'm not kidding you. I have one individual that I was working with, and then they shared with me, and they were spending $3,700 a month on vitamin supplement and like nutritional enhancements, and I'm just wow. But it had been accumulated over a 5 year period of working with these nutritional. And I'm like, well, have you prayed over the things you had? And we found out that she was able to eliminate over $3,000 of them. Now, she may have needed them in the beginning stages to remind the mitochondrial strength of the body of a certain frequency it had lost track of, or
Mhm.
to remind the body to come back into order with higher methylation of the cells, or higher methylation of the nutrients, or higher methylation of the vitamins that they took into their bodies. And all of a sudden, their body now carries that frequency and the mitochondria can reproduce it. But without that, and without this, I mean, with all this constant bombardment of the environment, sometimes we may be called to energetic or frequency substances that might help us reboot the system that we're in our body, to come back in touch with what we talked about in the beginning, which was the spiritual frequencies that help us to ascend to a higher state of being.
Yeah, I do. And I myself, I have this practice in the morning where I would want to spend about half an hour in meditation by myself. And I like to burn some incense. It
Mm-hmm.
just gives me a sense of holy presence. I don't know how to express it, but it just is, it changes the whole environment. And I guess what you're saying is you have to find, you have to understand where is it being addicted to a process that you cannot do it without it versus recognizing the inner connection that you already have and you don't necessarily need those tools.
Right.
I'm wondering, you have been for over 30 years, you have been working with people, right, Larry?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I know some stories that you have told me and that you also wrote in the book, The
Yep.
Covenant in Love, where people would be healed basically from
Mm-hmm.
sickness and illness.
Yep.
And you probably did not use any specific tools in terms of, material tools like oil or anything like this.
Agreed.
Can you kind of maybe describe how
Well,
this process works?
that is an interesting question, because one of the things that I've learned when it comes to praying over animals or individuals that are like so sick that they're near dead or gone, or in a case where an individual was dead and in prayer just woke, the reality is they weren't thinking. The animals don't think, they just receive. The human that I was praying over that was dying of an overdose was just received, because he didn't have anywhere else to go, and he had no thought within his. He was done, and the prison told him, and there's no way we're going to save this guy, and boom, he's back, fully clear, eyes wide open, blue as could be, talking. So to me, what happens is we this, and within our own construct of our mind, we have not been guarding ourselves towards the nature of what we've been taking in frequency wise or vibrationally. We have been altering ourselves by the very nature of the words that we speak. So we form a lesser frequency in word offering. Oh, I'm just so confused. Or, oh God, I'm so filled with anxiety. We're naming this as the nature of our being. So we're presenting that frequency result. What I found within people that are extreme and have just reached the point, I have nothing else to offer, and then they finally come to that prayer guy, we pray and it changes, because they've given up on the constructs or the false import or the imposition of understanding, where the doctors kept telling them, oh, there's no answer for you. Oh, no, you're dead. You're done. You better go home and get your affairs in order. And when they've given up, all of a sudden, the prayer emerges in them, because they are not guarded or resistant or thinking it away. They hear the prayers of life, and hope enters in, and all of a sudden their bodies shift to recognize the higher frequency that was always present in them.
So it's like
Not,
it's
go
surrender.
ahead. Yeah,
Surrender.
it is.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's not just a frequency. Like I know that there's wonderful ways to enhance things, like you said, with if you're going to use the incense and it kind of positions you to be in a higher state of mind or a more relaxed state of mind and not thinking about the demands of the day and responsibilities of your full-time job and all the weddings that you have to put together for people. You can just it allows you a safe ground to say, yep, this is my time. And it's a reminder to you. Now, in my practice, you said, as you know, I was serving people for more than 35 years, that I've moved to this awareness that state of like the incense awareness. I look for God's presence directly. I'm now. I mean, I just my practice is after many years of different meditations and prayers and once I attained an awareness of God's presence within me, that's my peace. That is the peace. When I touch that now within a breath or within two or three breaths,
Mhm.
that that is the beginning for me, that which precedes frequency. Then I'm able to discern, ooh, this frequency ain't so good. Oh, that one's good. Oh, this one I can receive. That one is okay. So if I do become practiced in creator first, I, I again, like we talked about at the beginning, I am now not limited by frequency. I'm positioned in such a way that is pre-frequency.
Yeah.
Then I'm able to engage in frequency that comes of the holy attributes. Okay.
That's really interesting, Larry. I also was always wondering if there is a different aspect when it is more than one person together, like a group of people seeking frequencies, or they chant together, or they create a different environment of healing or togetherness or oneness. How does that play into everything?
Well,
It,
there's a couple factors that are included there, but this is again, we have to come back to that spiritual, like backing up for a minute. Spiritual IQ versus intellectual IQ. And forgive me for the English faux pas there of the fact that it's intellectual IQ, well, intellectual quotient level or whatever. But thought IQ is different from spiritual IQ. And you have to remember that now in my mind, I hold certain thoughts and awareness and the ability to connect to certain memories and certain, flip through um, the index of all the things that I've learned through my life and pull from memory. That is the limit of intellectual IQ or knowledge that I've been exposed through video shorts, memes, or encyclopedia when I was younger. We used to go and you flip through the card decks in the library and pull out books and sit there for hours looking at things and trying to digest information. But that is intellectual IQ that is formed of my perspective looking up and my perspective looking toward something. What I try to help people understand is that there is a difference between intellectual IQ and spiritual IQ. Spiritual IQ is surrendering that which is intellect and touching to the living divine, and all of a sudden you have insights and awareness that were above anything you've ever been taught. I found myself sitting in rooms with physicists and all of a sudden speaking their language. I found myself sitting there with doctors and able to speak their language. I've never been taught as a medical doctor. I've sit with theologians. I've never been taught as a theologian, but I found that I can speak from that. But that's the spiritual IQ level. In other words, I am nothing, but the very nature of God's presence presents through me, and then it moves them to an excited space of dialogue that they're sharing in dialogue with. They think there's somebody that's a contemporary with them. And they're flowing with it beautifully until all of a sudden, so where did you go to school? Well, I didn't. What? And now all of a sudden they turn into this intellectual limitation. You don't have a degree? No. But how do you know? And, especially when I come to theologians that are infuriated in the fact that they've been involved in theological study for 40 years And God allowed me to have an understanding that they formulated over 40 years, but was present within me when I was younger, in my 20s. And it caused a contention within them. So now we start to see, what does the collective do? So we shift from, am I moving from a place from spiritual IQ, or am I in the limitations of my mind? So we come into a group setting, like mind, like thought process, like considerations, people that draw together of like beliefs, whether it's a church organization or a corporate body or whatever. What we are dealing with is a collective sense of IQ that is beyond spiritual IQ in the fact that it's not connected with it. And then there's intellectual IQ and this group body of intellect. And half of the people in the room don't know that they're in that room because of like beliefs or like understanding, but they were drawn together. So there is a higher, remember what we were talking about before about there are things that are happening beyond our physical sight. There are things of a spiritual nature that are unfolding beyond our perceptive awareness in our human form. That begins to start to coalesce within groups of people that are of like belief. That's how you see certain religious groups that are all of a sudden believing of the ability to persecute another. The whole group looks down upon this group or that individual. Or you look at a political setting and you hear people looking into a political setting and they're looking at an individual, and one group is looking at that individual saying, where did you get this information from? There's no physical, yeah, but we believe it. And they will stand on that without even any physical evidence because they are willing to protect themselves from collapsing in their understanding of what they thought to be absolute. And that lower frequency, in other words, their inability to open up to the possibility that there might be more knowledge than they think they know. And every business development seminar has said this thing that there are things you know, there are things you don't know. There are also things you don't know that you don't know. So if you're functioning in that realm in a group of people that you're drawn into, you can trust that there is a frequency governance upon that body of people. So if you have a body of people that diminish women throughout thousands of years, if it's religious mind stunt or construct, the person has to awaken, like that child you were talking about becoming an adult, has to awaken to the fact that, wait a minute. That idea that they're presenting me from the group that I've been a part of doesn't fit the higher frequencies of the attributes of God. Why would God diminish one half of itself? God is both feminine and masculine without separation or delineation, but the very nature of all blessed attributes of both combined into one. And that follows his living expression that even preceded that. So why would God look upon one group of people as less than another? Why would God take the idea of the feminine and say it's less, it's subservient, it's nothing, it wouldn't. Creator would never diminish. So you could look at it from a spiritual IQ and say, this is not of the highest frequency. This is not of source. Within this group I am sitting in, I am beginning to hear dialogue, thoughts, and judgments that are not formed by personal experience. Back to the political realm. There are people that have formed absolute hatred on certain political figures, and they haven't personally experienced the individual. They can't honestly say that they themselves have this to hang on to. And I don't believe that there's any room for hatred at all. So let's say I did sit with this political character and I started to discover that, wait a minute, most of what they're saying is not true, but yeah, there's some pretty nasty aspects in these three attributes. I don't have any place to embrace the lower frequency of hatred for that individual on any level. What I need to do is sustain that 100 or that 1,000 frequency, look at the three lesser things within that individual and pray for, instead of Like, let's say the individual was extremely arrogant. I would pray for an increase of humility. Let's say if the individual was delusional, I would say, Yahweh, I thank you to increase holy discernment within this individual. If the individual was abusive, I would say increase in holy compassion, understanding, clarity, and unity. So I don't care what the group presents me or what the head of a group is being described as. My role is to sustain that 1,000, that higher state of spiritual IQ, regardless of what the world or the spiritual realm presents to me. Is it an attribute of the divine? I can embrace and go with it. If it's not an attribute of divine, I have to pray for its ability to ascend into an attribute of the divine.
Most people don't think that way, right? Most people are steered by the group thinking or by the
Yeah,
group perception
exactly.
that's out there. So, but do you think times are changing? Do you think there's a shift going on that people maybe?
I would say predominantly yes. I would say that it is a larger percentage than it was because, like, as you know, like when both you and I were coming up through our years within the church and our experiences through that, and I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but there were a lot of things that I questioned, and in the mere question, I was punished. So now the exciting aspect is people are asking questions. Yeah, there are segments of humanity that are trying to censor it and shut it off and close it down. But there is a larger group of people excitedly coming back with, oh, that's a good question. What if this could be the answer? What if that could be the answer? And they're presenting exciting possibilities for an answer to that individual's question instead of beating them down in a corner, or in my case, whipping them with this paddle thing that they used to do, or whipping them with this leather switch thing that they used to do across the back of the neck or the back of the knees or whatever. And so to me, the corporal aspect of the group, the corporal punishment of that body of individuals has fallen away. So we're seeing a peeling away of many lesser frequencies. And as you know, over these past like 10 years, we've seen the exposure of many lower frequencies that were hidden beyond sight and are now so obvious that if a person is denying their presence, they're in the spirit of denial for fear of being wrong or fear of being judged. So we pray release of the fear within them and that they would be increased through holy wisdom and discernment to how to align themselves with the divine frequencies instead of putting down others that they feel they hold in judgment.
When you
And you're
say,
right. That's
yeah,
not common what people think. So
yeah. And you're saying, we are being exposed to more and more things that come up and are exposed that we haven't known for years. And I think
agreed.
due to that fact, though, we may feel weak. We may feel we need to bond together with others, with a group, to
Thank you for sharing that because I don't go there.
but most people do. I mean, I sometimes
Yeah,
feel that way. I'm like, oh goodness, okay, this is my opinion, but I'm not getting anywhere. Nobody's listening to me. What I'm trying to share. But if I find a body or I find a group of people that have a similar train of thought or idea or philosophy, then you feel safe. But I know that may not be the solution. I understand that, but I think the human nature is to seek strength in a group, and
but
now
what
all
if
of a
you
sudden I think
remember
we're
the
switching it.
but what if you remember the meaning of life? What if you remember the meaning of life that is more than humanity? What if you remember that the totality is no group, there is only one. So I don't have to find myself to be a part of a group, but every single time I see something revealed that's beyond my comprehension or beyond my understanding or beyond my willingness to accept, ah, this is a way to position me more deeply in the prayer of the higher frequency than it is. It's not going to define me. If this certain thing happened politically, or this certain thing happened corporately, or this certain thing happened religiously, it doesn't define me. Creator defines me. From Creator, I look back into these settings and I offer thanksgiving that it's been revealed. And if we see deception against a certain nation of people where money has just been spent indiscriminately and deceptively and criminally and all this stuff, we pray for holy integrity to enter in. We pray in thanksgiving that as a body, we recognize that not only was this revealed, but now we see where the wound is and we know how to fix it. That we would bring forward integrity in the resolution instead of an overwhelming nature and what's been going on in our background for years.
Hmm.
So we celebrate the fact that it has finally emerged, not overwhelmed by it happening.
So what would be a tool or a maybe a 2 or 3 step process how one can find his or her own internal frequency to be separate from the general, train of frequency that's out there that we're used to tune in, the society, how it demands us what we need to do. How can we find what would be your recommendation? How we can really tune into this inner frequency? And I know you mentioned a few things just now, but can we maybe narrow it down to 1 or 2 or 3 steps? How we can do this on a daily
Well,
basis?
realistically, some of the things that I might offer really might piss off a number of groups, to be frank with you. And
That's okay.
excuse the language, but the bottom line is there are people drawing from counsel that is not of the divine, that calls itself the divine. There are people that draw to counsel because they don't see themselves as worthy to draw directly to Creator. So they divert and they move toward spirit guides, or they move toward the angelic realm, or they move toward, previous teachers, or they move toward a certain celebrity on the planet Earth and revere them beyond their standing. And that in itself becomes the deceiver. The answer to your question would be heighten your ability to center upon God within you. And the only way God is going to present to you, in you, is in clarity, without voice, and all aspects of the divine will be known in you like a memory. It will come to you in the sense of a knowing, not a dialogue. I'm going to talk to God today. No, I believe that that is untruth. When they are talking about the voice of God spoke to me while I was sitting in my office, when you hear that coming from a minister, what that is an egoic sense of separation or division. When you hear people talking to the angelic realm that, oh, the angel came and spoke with me and blah, 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 blah. No, if you look at even the scripture, the way they describe that, the angel of God, meaning God's only presence, when that angel presented, the angel presented into their midst, the only thing they knew was God. They did not know the name of an angel. They did not know it as a separate form. But what happens is people get misdirected into this ground where they encounter a spirit guide that holds a name. It is separate. It is no longer of the one. And it identifies itself and makes a relationship with this individual, and it forms this. And we see people that go through schizoaffective behavior, schizophrenic, because they think they're drawing to voices that are their guides. And their lives are corrupted and broken and damaged by all the counsel they receive, while they're receiving all these amazing promises. And this is why I say, to some people, this really will kind of hit right between the eyes. If you're seeking spiritual guidance other than the way that God said, Yahweh Elohim, that is my name. I am that I am. Call upon my name, Yahweh Elohim, anytime you are in need or distress. Any and all times. That's it. But what happens is people go into these sideline approaches. I don't want to bother God right now. He's too busy. And they draw off to this other sense of counsel, or like what we were just sharing about the idea of the memes and the different things we land of the earth, or sitting in a library reading a book, have you honestly, truthfully sought the presence of God within you before you have drawn to Scripture? In other words, the writings of man, the spiritual interpretations and writings of man in the form of Scripture. Have you honestly sought the living Word, meaning God's presence within you, to weigh and measure the things you're about to consume? So, as we talked about food, do you know the chemicals that you're bringing into your body with food? Do you know the experiences that you're going through? Is that oil that you're using actually of a higher frequency, or it is carrying metals to the bodies? What are you doing? So now we go back to, all right, this knowledge that I'm bringing in through my eyes or I'm listening to on a video, have I honestly set myself before the presence of God within and remembered that God said, Yahweh Elohim, that is my name. Call upon my name any time you are in need or distress. So we position ourselves first before the presence of God, and then we would see within what we're reading going, ooh, that aligns with God. That aligns with God. Oh, that's not in alignment with God. Oh, wait a minute. This one's convincing me that I'm dying of cancer, or this one's convincing me that I'm dying of this disease or whatever. Nope. God is life. The words of death coming from this individual take no power within me. What is he revealing to me? Oh, he just said lung cancer. Okay. I search the presence of God now to understand what is it within me that allowed my body to produce a fruit of cancer within me. What of a spiritual nature in the spiritual IQ instead of intellectual IQ? What in the spiritual nature altered the frequency of my body in such a way that it permitted disease to be present? And then, am I attuned enough to know that the treatment that they're offering is going to do more damage than this, yet God guides me in a way that I apply this treatment that sustains, strengthens, and renews my body?
Fascinating. I heard a quote by someone, I don't even remember who it was, but that woman said, if you are exactly what you want to be and you do what exactly you want to do, you're guided to do in life, you cannot be sick. It's impossible. You cannot be
Agreed.
ill.
Yeah.
I thought that was a fascinating statement. And if I think back to like
Mm-hmm.
Tesla or Einstein or
Mm-hmm.
any other people that had this huge genius inventions and findings that were unheard of, and all of a sudden they came forward through them, I think they have kind of retracted into their own spiritual realm and connection to source, to God, whatever
Yep.
you want to call it, not being influenced by opinions and concepts and things that float around them, so that they
Yep.
can actually produce and bring forward the truth, be it a scientific truth or a spiritual
Yep.
truth, or that is so often hidden. And Tesla said, I'm reading here, Tesla emphasized that all matter and phenomena are forms of vibrational energy, and by tuning into these frequencies, one can understand and influence the world around them. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
other way around, right?
Agreed.
It's coming
Yep.
from inside out. So
Exactly.
it's fascinating. God first, but what we at
Yep.
Grace Healing, we always say, God
Mm-hmm.
first before you take any decisions or speak any
Exactly.
word or think any thought. That
Well, I'd like to go back to what you said about those individuals that could not allow for sickness to be within their bodies. They found people in the Congo, they have found people in the Andes, they found people in Japan, 120, 135 years old, that smoked almost every day of their lives, that drank their sake or whatever they happen to have in their whatever they're doing. They ate one, but they had a wonderful life. They had grandchildren running around, children being with them, and they weren't in a state of war, feudally, or anything like that. They just lived, worked, found blessing in the results. They produced these amazing works with their hands, whether they do carpentry techniques or whatever. They just lived, and in frequency extension produced amazing works of art. or produced incredible children, or produced a love and unity within their villages that was just unheard of. And they lived to 140 years or 135 years.
But don't
And
you but don't you
go ahead.
think the aspect of community is important too?
Oh,
Because
yeah, the
usually it's a
community aspect.
village.
Yeah, yeah, because now we're back to that agreed upon. There are people of like mindset, like understanding, and they're in support of one another in the
Yeah,
creative flow. They're in support of one another in the higher state of their beings. They're elevating one another. They're not putting each other down in the corner and talking
exactly.
about that girl over there, putting this one down there. They're in a unified, meaning divine,
Yep.
unity, and they're in compassion for one another. They're elevating one another. They're in the divine attributes, and in the divine attributes, sickness cannot be present. Yes, there may be accidents that occur and take somebody's life or whatever like that, but for those that function in that ground, their sensibilities are heightened and they don't find themselves in those accidental disruptions or the pain or disruption that could be caused by misalignment of the body or whatever.
Yeah, so the individual connection to source, to God, does not deny the community
Exactly.
experience at all. It actually can enhance it if you're in the right environment. And
Yep.
I'd like to, we kind of gonna wrap it up, and I'd like to just add some thoughts I have about vibration and
Yes.
frequency. You know, when you take a tuning fork and you hit it at the note C, and you have another tuning fork with the note C, it's going to vibrate exactly at the same frequency,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So to me, this sort of means if we were to attune ourselves first to our own frequency to source, and then associate with people that have that same frequency, then we can create an environment and a society and a community that is
Hmm.
peaceful and productive and happy and joyful, and anything that's not disturbing, like we've experienced so much now in society.
Yes.
Don't you agree?
Yep. Yes, I do. But then we can ascend that thought to an even higher level. What if those around us, whether they be family or friends or a shared group of people, what if we see that they are evidencing a lower frequency, a lower state of being? We don't distance ourselves from them.
Mhm.
We deepen ourselves as God within us, knowing that God is within them. So we ascend not only as God within us, but we ascend conveying the living frequency of all the attributes of God toward that individual as God within them. For we are
No,
one.
no
There is no
judgment.
distance. Exactly. No judgment, only the desire for betterment, only the desire for increased glory within them, only the desire for increased magnification of life through them, increased abundance. Like you hear a lot of people talking now because they're trying to set up this barrier between people that have wealth and those that don't have wealth. If a person has wealth, I'm ecstatic to pray for increase upon them, that they would be increased in abundance and increased in wisdom and clarity and how to apply it in such a way to magnify glory in their lives, not just their own personal desires, but to express it out in a way that it becomes living and moving and vibrational present for others to benefit from instead of just holding it sequestered in a jewelry box that's closed and can't play the music because it's hidden with gold buried under the ground or something like that. But if
Yeah.
we open that jewelry box by deepening ourselves as God within and praying for them, we would ascend as God within them. So people say you got to cause distance when people are being different from you. I disagree. Think you need to deepen as God's presence within and ascend within them, knowing that they can attain and receive and accept and begin to function in the higher states of being that are available for them to magnify their lives, to magnify glory from within them, to reach into other places that they may not have thought of.
And there's nothing wrong by using tools that science or the arts give
Oh,
us,
yeah.
such as music, and the nice
Yes.
smells of oils or incense to create that
Yep.
environment where everybody
Yep.
opens their heart and
Exactly.
and to that connection. That's awesome.
Now, I
Great.
have to be honest with you on that point right there, just before we close here. And I know you want to close out. So there
You can go on.
is, okay, there is a thought that in my walk, what I've experienced, I absolutely love music. I love certain type of scents and oils and different things like that. But as I said, in my walk and journey, I found that those were available for certain states of where my being was. I find greater peace. It's like my son or my daughters tease me constantly because I don't have the radio on in the car. I don't listen to anything. I am in prayer going from one place to another. If I'm setting up job sites or I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I am in a state. And then, like when I've set up job crews on building projects and stuff like that, they're like, "Where's the radio?" I didn't bring it. It's in the back of the trailer. If you want to go grab it. Oh, and they go grab it. But some of them, they don't turn it on because they started to discover how blessed they were in the meditative practice of cutting the paint in and just doing it in silence. And one guy just had to have his music on all the time, all the time, all the time. But then he found every time he was working around me, there was no radio. And I watched him. And he became more intentional, more focused, more present. And he was able to overcome. He said this to me later. And he found that because he was a 3-year recovered alcoholic. And he found that, when I wasn't surrounding myself in constant input and I became centered on that place of silence, I didn't have the same temptations I had before. Because when I was stirring desire or stirring the corporeal nature of my form or whatever, when I was stirring these things, it made me want something more to go with it. And then I wanted that, and I wanted this, and I wanted that. So in that, yes, I have found tremendous blessing, and even the scent of even working with cedar or smelling frankincense. There's a wonderful expression of that. But what I've done, and this has happened over like the last 15 years or so, is I have reached this awareness that, wait a minute, this silence brings me what I thought I gained back there in the music I was listening to. And now, I mean, like I'm in that state already. So now, if you put on a song of a certain singer that is just amazing, I'm sitting there in tears because I'm already in the divine, observing the nature of what these people are bringing forth as God expresses through their vocal cords. As they hit this resonance, they perform at a certain level, but then one day you witness them at a certain resonant frequency. It's like, oh my God, it's a perfect example, like Sydney Christmas, this woman from England. Just you see a genuine sense of humility and innocence within her. And I've seen recorded performances of before this moment, but when she came to this one place where she did this performance, and it was just like, that is so far above even her level that it was just this moment of resonant frequency that was even above her side. And she knew it. She was like, oh my God, I felt a connection like I've never known before.
Yeah.
So if we can look into these situations, first presented in the divine, and then we take that practice, like we were saying earlier, practically, okay.
And
Well,
intentionally.
yeah. Well, what if I went to God first before I went to the doctor's office?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if I went to God first before I went to the financial assistance office? Or what if I went to God first before I went to court? And you would find yourself in that resonant frequency where you would be moving with humility, you would be moving with intellect, clarity, wisdom, and discernment, and you would bring a higher state of being to whatever situation's being scrutinized. If it's a court, or even an IRS audit, or whatever it happens to be, you don't go in fear, you connect first unto the divine. And your state of being and resonant frequency changes the outcome of the meeting.
Exactly. And also on a very simple level, now you went really deep into using,
I didn't expect to, but it
yeah,
does.
using it as, for really practical things. But for me, sometimes, I used to listen to some upbeat upbeat, fast music, which I can't do anymore. I prefer
Hmm.
the quiet, soothing thing. So for me, that means music has a influence on my nerves to calm me down, to put me into a state where I can connect,
Yeah,
to God easier. So it can go that way as well. And for me, that's my experience that I make. I often drive in the car for an hour and I don't have a radio on either. And I find it
exactly.
extremely peaceful. But other
Yeah,
times I'm like, okay, I just like to have in the background a little bit of a
yep.
sound, a soothing sound. So there's different ways to experience that. So, but anyway, so the discussion today was about vibrations and frequencies. I think we went into all sorts of directions. And what I take from here is that we shouldn't take the vibrations and frequencies of our surroundings as granted and as something that we just have to take in. No, we should really focus on our own internal frequency, our connection to God, God first. That will
Exactly.
help us to deal with everything that's happening around us in a
Yep.
more positive way. So
From
that's
that divine oversight that we've talked about before, if I can choose God perspective within me, I now have oversight to see into creation, to understand my proper place within it, not my diverted place within it. I'm not diverted by either lesser frequencies or by the impressions of others. I
ex-
am in alignment with that which is the higher state of being, that is God within.
perfect. Awesome discussion. Thank you, Larry.
Yes, it's been
Great
a joy
time
to be
together.
here again.
Yeah, and please join us at gracehealing.org, where we have a lot of different videos and material available for you to look at and read up. There's also the book on there. What's your book's name again, Larry?
A covenant in love, the meaning of life revealed, because that's why I was picking that idea. But they can go to Amazon at amazon.com and just order it up, A Covenant in Love.
Yeah, we have a link on the website as well. It's a really great book. I've read it several times, and I just found myself the other day opening up on page 174, finding a paragraph out of the blue, and it exactly was the right thing to read for me for that day. So it's a great
Awesome.
book. So, all right,
Awesome.
Larry, till next time.
Yes, I look forward to it.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
Blessings to
Thank you.
you all, and thank you all for being here and listening. And we thank you for liking and subscribing. And we are grateful for the opportunity to share viewers out. And actually, I would say that right now, there's a whole lot of people that have been reaching out. There's a lot going on, so people are seeking answers, and we are here to provide them for you, or at least direct you to the answers that are resident within you.
Awesome.
Have an
Thank you,
amazing
everyone.
week.
Bye bye.